Two people who oppose the new anti-abortion law in Texas are suing a doctor, Dr. Alan Braid, in order to test the legality of the law. So this is using the law, so bear that in mind, but by people who are doing it so that it can start to work its way through the court system and potentially be either knocked down or put on hold at one of the intermediary steps before eventually, inevitably, the massively conservative Supreme Court upholds the whole thing. But that's just my prediction. We'll see as we get there. But anyway, a San Antonio doctor who said that he performed an abortion in defiance of a new Texas law has been sued by two people. Former attorneys in Arkansas and Illinois filed lawsuits against Dr. Alan Braid, who in a weekend Washington Post opinion column became the first Texas abortion provider to publicly reveal that he had violated the law, which began at the beginning of this month. In the op-ed, he said, on the morning of September 6th, I provided an abortion to a woman who, though still in her first trimester, was beyond the state's new limit. I acted because I had a duty of care to this patient, as I do for all patients, and because she has a fundamental right to receive this care. I believe abortion is an essential part of healthcare. I spent the past 50 years treating and helping patients. I can't just sit back and watch us return to 1972. And you know, Nina, I'd been wondering when we would start to see doctors or clinics being clear about this, and it actually took quite a while. It took weeks for, I understand, look, being sued and potentially suffering those consequences is very intimidating. But I am glad that there are doctors that are taking a stand and saying we're not gonna, take back rights that these women have had their entire lives effectively.
Yeah, and I certainly applaud this doctor and all other doctors in Texas who will follow his lead. The duty of care, _bold, is vitally important, and I'm glad the doctor laid that out that way. And then also to go backwards in time, I mean, there are women who actually died before abortions were legal. Abortions are part of reproductive health care, and that's what we need to understand and start to see that as a nation, that it is part of a holistic reproductive health care for women. And I've had women, tell stories, especially when I was in the legislature, of, coat hangers, the backyard abortions, because one way or the other, folks are gonna get it. Roe v. Wade, law of the land, Texas is upending that. Safe, legal, and rare. And they wanna go backwards in time. It's very clear that this doctor understood not just his duty of care, but as the doctor laid out, he doesn't wanna see a time where we were pre-Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, and these two lawyers from two different states, although they say that they're in supportive of reproductive rights, are doing, I guess, what has to happen, which is suing this doctor that they technically agree with, because under the law, the restriction can only be enforced through private lawsuits. The first is Oscar Stilley, said he's not opposed to abortion, but sued to force a court review of the law. Felipe Gomez of Chicago asked a court in San Antonio in his lawsuit to declare the new law unconstitutional. In his view, the law is a form of government overreach. He said his lawsuit is a way to hold the Republicans who run Texas accountable. The weird thing though is, and I am not a lawyer, and I guess it's baked into this bounty system, how could either of them be said to have any standing whatsoever? They literally do not even live in the state. They don't know either the woman who had the abortion, the doctor who performed it. They have no vested interest in literally any of this. And that is why, that's another reason why the Supreme Court obviously should have put it on hold. They've created an enforcement mechanism where literally only people who have no interest beyond being a reproductive rights Karen effectively have no standing in any of the court cases that they're gonna be launching. But the Republicans did that because they believed it would allow the Supreme Court to give them time, saying it's novel or whatever. And that is unfortunately the way that it's going. And so we have to go through these ridiculous machinations like these two lawyers doing this. And I know that we're getting into the area, I guess, of speculation, Nina, but the idea is that another court might knock this down. What do you think about those odds based on what you've been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility, and I hope that does happen. The Supreme Court certainly, abdicating its responsibility here. And we gotta stop tech. There will be a lot of copycats, if you will, all across this country because of Texas. And they are definitely turning back the hands of time on women's reproductive health care, which is a multifaceted realm within medicine. Abortion access is only one portion of that reproductive health care. But I am hoping that we're gonna hold out hope on this one and hoping that the legal system will provide some redress. And the Congress needs to get ready to act as well, because we know once the Supreme Court acts or does not act, the Congress has some power there, and we got to make sure that we utilize it to not turn back the hands of time for women.
Yeah, the Democrats in theory could do something, assuming that both the filibuster and the parliamentarian are asleep at the same time, then maybe something can be done. In any event, fast updates from the areas around Texas. In Oklahoma City, Trust Women, which provides abortions and other forms of reproductive care, saw 80 abortion patients the week of the 6th of September, about double what it would normally see. Close to 2/3 of those patients were from Texas. Another clinic in Kansas saw 70 abortion patients that same week, with half coming from Texas. And so the Oklahoma City clinic is booked solid through the end of September. The volume of patient calls has increased tenfold. Patients are calling from Houston and Dallas. And so you're seeing what you would expect. Women wanting to exercise their reproductive rights are having to travel, potentially driving, potentially flying outside of the state they live in to be able to exercise those rights once again. And so again, it can still in theory happen, assuming you have the resources, you can take the time off, you can afford to pay for the travel. And so as we've always said, these sorts of laws do not stop all abortions, they stop some abortions. If you don't have the means, if you don't have the influence, then it might actually stop you.
That's it, John. I'm glad you brought that up, because the barriers are important. The barriers to reproductive health, the barriers to abortion, the burden is bore primarily by poor women, once again, which is the reality, quite frankly, for most elements of healthcare, but especially something like this.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, I would refer everyone watching this to the interview that I did about a week ago with Ellie Mistel, where we talked about some of the other court cases. We have an update on one of those that we discussed in that interview. The Supreme Court has scheduled arguments for the highly anticipated Mississippi abortion case that's gonna be December 1st. The court will be considering the legality of Mississippi's ban on most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And this is the sort of court case before the Supreme Court that in theory, if the Supreme Court decided, no, we're just done with Roe v. Wade, it's gone. This is the sort of case where in theory that could actually be applied. More so than on the challenges that'll come from the Texas bill, even if that effectively eliminates Roe v. Wade for most women. Sure. So we'll be updating you on that as well.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.